Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I've been so like excited to speak with you on all of these different occasions. It's been really fulfilling,
I
honestly.
know. I feel like I have new friends, and
I
it's just
know.
so nice to meet people that are like-minded. They love Disneyland, but also this topic being so important. So today we're going to talk about adults, neurodivergent adults, and Disneyland. And I first want to start, if you wouldn't mind, giving a little introduction about yourself and your connection to Disneyland.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not one of those, the very I don't want to say typical, but more common story is I've been going to Disneyland since I was a kid, and I have all these memories from when I was a child, and I don't have that experience. I actually started going more when I was a teenager, and I really started loving Disneyland after my high school grad night. So I went. With some friends and my girlfriend, and we had such a good time. And I was like, I love Disneyland. And so I started going a little bit more as a teenager. When I was dating in my early 20s, I take girls on dates to try to impress them, and so Disneyland was more of a teenager thing for me. And then I actually started working there when I was 20 years old. I worked on the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes for a couple of years. It was the best job I've ever had. I worked at Disneyland. I got paid to work out rowing around the rivers of America every day, getting a tan and telling jokes to people. It was one of the best experiences of my life. But in the training and throughout the experience, you're taught, Walt's ideals for why this theme park exists and what he wanted to get out of it. And I just fell in love with the man and the motives, and the Disney training was the best professional training I've experienced. That's why it's so popular now, as a business. And I've carried that with me in every job that I've ever had. And so I moved away from California and for about 8 years. And when I came back, I knew that I was going to immediately buy an annual pass for my daughter and I. She was 4 at the time, and I did. And so we've been going for the past 11 years. We've been pass holders for as long as they've had them, except for COVID, obviously.
Mhm.
I met my wife there, and we got engaged there. We go there, probably once or twice a week. And we kind of became a walking FAQ for Disneyland. And that turned into very quickly a podcast. And so we've been running a podcast called Magic on Main Street and a YouTube channel for the past 5 or 6 years. And it's fulfilling. We get to talk about the thing that we love so much.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I really appreciate it. We connected related to DOS and sensory considerations. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind, if you're comfortable, sharing a bit about your neurodivergence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a crazy discovery process, mainly over the past, I don't know, maybe decade. Really, since I've been with my wife Tabitha, we've kind of identified some things in each other that we were like, hey, we should probably figure this out.
Yeah.
And one of those, the biggest thing is I live with ADHD and sensory processing sensitivity. So
Mhm.
basically, I get super overwhelmed and busy, loud, or highly stimulating environments. And then also to top that off, I also have bipolar disorder. I live with bipolar disorder. So alongside those ADHD and sensory challenges, it gets kind of intense sometimes,
Yeah.
because my sensory thing, I can't process sounds and sights and smells and touch, in the right way. I always compare it to having surround sound coming out of one speaker. I can't figure out what's coming from where
Yeah.
sometimes. And so that can turn into a lot of different things. It can turn into anxiety, where it's more like an anxiety attack. It can turn into irritability,
Mhm.
and sometimes straight up anger. And that's hard to deal with when you're in the middle of hundreds of people in a line at a theme park. So sensory overload is really tricky at Disneyland, because they pride themselves on you know uh, uh, appealing to all of your senses.
Yeah.
The smell of popcorn or the smell of candy walking down Main Street, the sounds of Main Street, the different songs and bands that they have playing all the time, sound effects on rides, lights flashing, fireworks. So it's tricky sometimes, but I've found that through support of my family, understanding of them and my friends, whoever I'm with, and then also sometimes the accommodations of the DOS program, which is a little bit hard these days because it's so restrictive and yeah, so I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yeah, so that's really, I kind of survive by my family and these different accommodations that are afforded us in Disneyland to kind of navigate and enjoy the parks safely, I guess.
Yeah.
It's all
So
about balance.
yeah, I mean, it's all about balance. It's about like finding your own comfort level and,
Yeah.
finding the accommodations that work for you. And one of those accommodations at Disneyland is the DOS program.
Yes.
And I know we've talked a little bit about it, but first I'd like to know, do you use the DOS program? And if so, what has your experience been like through registering and then using the service in the park?
Yeah, I almost feel bad saying this now, just in the landscape that we're in with the politics around DOS. But I do utilize the program. I am enrolled, but I don't use it very often. And there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah.
When you were on our show, I had talked about, and I actually just put up a reel about it today. I had talked about kind of the I don't know, guilt around using it because, who am I? Why would I get this special privilege? But when you look at it, it's not really a privilege. It's
Yeah.
really just a way for me to enjoy an attraction in the same way anyone else would, but without standing in a traditional line.
Yep.
So when we had spoken a couple weeks ago, I really wanted to point out that DOS is not a front of the line pass. That is a very common misconception. It's one of those Disneyland myths that a lot of people think that if you sign up for DOS, you're just going to go straight to the front of the line.
Yeah.
And that's not true in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Even if a ride is, 5 minutes, you still have to put in your name and go through the app and still go through the process. So it's not like I'm just walking up and saying, hey, I've got this special thing, let me in. It's, you have to register for it, which I've registered and it's an experience. But then you also have to, choose what ride you want to ride and then wait that amount of time. So if the traditional queue is 60 minutes, you basically wait 60 minutes and then you go through a different line. And there's a lot of times where I've used DOS and it hasn't benefited me at all because I've waited and maybe something stimulated me outside of that queue. And now I'm going into you go in through the lightning lane. Maybe I go in frustrated or anxious or
Yeah.
irritable. And then I have to wait sometimes literally sometimes up to an hour in just that line.
Hmm.
So again, it's not a front of the line pass. It's more of a way around the traditional line that is sometimes more uh, accommodating. It's sometimes it's the same as waiting in the traditional line. But I honestly, and this is also for a couple of reasons. I don't ride attractions very often. We do go quite a bit. We're there once or twice a week because we do have the podcast, and we, obviously we love the place, but we also like to gather as much content as possible. So some days it's just a content day, and we just go in and record everything we can, or sometimes it's just a friend day, and we go in and we meet up with a friend and have dinner, or whatever the case, and just kind of walk around. We've used Disneyland as kind of like the bar next door, as an example,
Yeah.
where we meet up with friends, have a bite to eat, and then go home. But there are days where we're just like any other person that visits. Maybe they're going once in their life or once in the 10 years, and so we'll have somebody with us that's either new or doesn't get to go very often. And so it's in those times where we really get to experience Disneyland as kind of, I hate to
Like
say it, but
like a
as like a
tourist.
tourist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are the times that I absolutely have to utilize the system.
Yeah.
And that's gotten a little bit more difficult too, because they've limited the amount of folks that you can have on your pass to
Yeah.
4. It used to be 6. Heck, it used to be 10. which I think that's a little bit overkill. I think that's kind of crazy. But yeah, so it's limited to 4. So even still, we're not using it as much. So maybe we'll use Lightning Lane, or our part of our group will use Lightning Lane. We just did this the other day. Part of our group used Lightning Lane. I used my DOS, and then we just kind of met up when the time kind of lined up.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as registering goes, it's always been a very touchy thing, and I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. It's been a very difficult in-person experience. Um,
Yeah.
you know, for anybody that hasn't been through the experience before, this used to be an in-person, go to a plaid cast member at a guest services booth and tell them, make yourself as vulnerable as you can to tell them your deepest, darkest secrets about why you can't experience a ride line. You have to tell them, what you experience and how you experience it, and this is a stranger. I know that they're probably not judging you, or taking your what you're saying to anybody, but when you have something that you're not really sharing with the world, it's a little bit tough to go and tell this person, hey, this is my problem and I need help.
Yeah, you're really
um
putting yourself out there. And
yeah,
in person now, the way that they have it set up at the booths, I wouldn't necessarily say it's super private.
sure.
And that's why I always encourage people to try to register at home through the virtual process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So, ever since the online process became a thing, well, I wouldn't say that. We went to Walt Disney World in March of this year, and no, May. It doesn't matter. We went to Walt Disney World in May, and I was like, I'm obviously going to need to sign up for the service. I
Yeah.
knew things were changing, and so I went on the website. I registered for the online conversation, and for me it was very quick. I got in within 15 minutes, but then I spent about an hour on the phone with the cast member, and we really were just talking about, like, just kind of shooting the breeze. So my experience was very different from a lot of people's, and I don't know if it's just because I like to talk and I threw her off, or what it was, but we ended up talking about her vacation. And then it was like, okay, tell me about what you experience and how you experience it. There were some questions about how I manage my day to day outside of Disneyland, with some very specific examples. But yeah, the online registration was much more comfortable because I was sitting on my couch. I
Yeah.
had my wife next to me who could listen in and say, he's not telling you the truth. It's a lot worse than what he's saying. And that was really helpful, because sometimes I do underplay it. Just because, again, like, you're telling a stranger your problems that you wouldn't tell anybody but your doctor, or your most loved ones, and so it was, I would underplay some things. It's just like, you have to tell the truth. Like, you have to tell them, like, how bad it really is. There's been the times where I'm like, I don't know how to process what I'm hearing right now. I can hear that person yelling at her kid. I can hear that baby crying over there. I hear that kid's iPad. I hear the soundtrack to the ride. I hear the ride going around on the tracks. I hear everything and I can't process it. And I'm literally in tears because I
Hmm.
can't figure out, like, what is happening in my brain. And there was a point where I remember it very clearly. I was in line for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. We were on the outside of the attraction line, right in front of Rancho del Zocalo. And Tabitha looked at me and she said, "If you don't go talk to somebody about that," it wasn't called DOS at the time, but if you don't go talk to somebody about the disability pass, you can't keep coming here.
Yeah.
Bottom line, you can't. And I did. It was a couple visits after that. I was like, you know what, you're right. I've got to do this. And then I started going through that process. But again, having the online registration and the conversation over a Zoom call in your living room is so much better and so much easier. And I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah, I mean, even from my perspective, and I am not a neurodivergent individual, but having to go through the application and the registration process for my son, I'm nervous because I know how much the service means to us and how much we rely on it because it really changes our experience at Disneyland for
Yeah.
the better. And and I mean, I get a bit of anxiety thinking like, well, what happens if if we don't get accepted, you know?
Right.
So I definitely understand that. In talking about like when you are having a hard time in the park, is there a certain safe space or like a break area that you like to go to? Like, tell me what you kind of go through when you're feeling like that.
Yeah, so we kind of have we have to make light of this
Yeah.
sometimes. And I make light of everything. It's just who I am. It's a coping mechanism. We have this joke now that we have a $30,000 break room at Disneyland,
Hmm.
because we're DVC members and we have a DVC lounge.
Oh,
Uh, we will escape there sometimes because it's less noisy. Like
hmm.
they still have music inside and there's still people there, but it's very mellow. For the most part, people are respectful of everyone around them, and so they'll keep their volumes low. I can have a soft drink or a Powerade to kind of
Yeah.
get my juices flowing again. But so that's one, but I know that's not available to everyone. We'll find other places like the tables over near like behind the Small World Mall,
Oh,
like behind Edelweiss.
yeah.
It's typically pretty mellow over there.
Yeah.
I think people don't. I don't think people realize it's there on a lot of days because sometimes it's completely empty,
Yeah.
even on a busy
So
day.
I've been there before where it has been busy, but it is still like you can find a seat even towards the back or kind
Yeah,
of against that kind of railing, and we've
yeah,
gone there with a snack or even just to sit. And then out besides that area, like on the other side, like when you're walking down, I mean, it's not, like you're walking towards Small World over to the
hmm,
right, where usually like Aladdin and some of the characters are kind of like up
yeah,
those steps. There's a lot of like little kind of hidden spaces in there that you can just kind of like take a pause and you overlook the
yeah.
water and overlook that seating area.
Yeah,
That's a really good spot
absolutely.
too.
And in that same area, so in that general area, since the theater is not being used, the Fantasyland Theater up tucked back there, if you don't need like a chair, if you can sit on the ground or just kind of stand around and kind of,
Yeah.
relieve your brain a little bit, it's really quiet up there. It's
And
hardly
the
anything
train
going
not
on up
going
there.
right now, but I know
Yeah,
that's
and even when
temporary.
the train goes, it's every 5 minutes, and it's not super loud. You get the noise from the announcements, which that's such a trigger for me. But as I'm saying it, the trams are a nightmare. I hate the trams, and everybody always makes the joke that it's the first ride of the day. I'm like, this is the worst ride of the day. I hate this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can get far enough away to where you're not hearing the train announcements, I think you're fine. But I really like also Pelican Landing
Mhm.
over across from Haunted Mansion. It's that little seating
Yep.
area right outside of Harbor Galley.
You
That's
get some
always pretty
cookies
quiet.
and
You
you
get
just
some
sit over there.
cookies, exactly. And yeah, it's typically pretty quiet. If you are okay, if you have enough time to where you can say like, I need some rest, but I'm willing to put up with a little bit more chaos. Jumping on a raft to Tom Sawyer's Island
Oh,
or Pirate Slayer. I hate saying that. It's Tom Sawyer's Island.
totally.
Yeah, hopping on a raft and just going onto the backside of the island and just finding a bench is so serene. There's
Yeah.
hardly anything going on. You'll hear the noise from like the Mark Twain announcements and stuff, but it's nothing like it's not blaring, it's not too loud, and it's not too aggressive. So that's also a good one. Um, when I was talking to Tabitha about this, and I was like, "What are some spots?" I'm drawing a blank. It's just like Tropical Hideaway, and I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah.
except for Rosita. If you have to sit too close to her, she's way too loud. She's very loud. She's very harsh. So if you can
What
get far
about
enough away
at
from her,
what about at DCA? Are there any spots there that you like?
yeah, absolutely. So DCA is a little bit harder, but there's still some good spots if you can find. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I think Hollywood Lounge is not too bad if you
Mhm.
can get like really close to the hangar,
Yep.
but sometimes the sun is so intense back there that it almost creates more chaos in your
Mhm.
life because now you're thinking I'm going to get sunburned and I'm on fire and this is not
Yeah.
a good experience. But if you catch it on like a cooler day, it's pretty. pretty mellow back there, or even in front of the stage because they don't keep the music too loud there. And if there's no performances, it's pretty chill. Um, I don't like I don't like their Starbucks very often,
Oh,
but sitting outside of it, if you can get closer to the walkway to I'll still call it Condor Flats until I die. If you can get closest to that, it's usually not too bad. But then also uh, Sonoma Terrace,
yep.
it looks bustling, but it's not.
It's not.
I like that spot.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
also like it because it's like the perfect amount of shade. Like
yeah.
it's never
There's
really,
no sun there.
yeah. I like that spot a lot. I also like the kind of that open space from Hyperion to Galaxy. You know, not Tower of Terror. What's it like? I'm
Guardians of the
totally
Galaxy.
yes. Like, but right now I know that that is blocked off, and they have like a lot of the like
Oh,
Oogie
Hyperion.
Boogie.
Yes, Hyperion.
Yes,
Yeah, so they'll keep that. That won't be a good option until
after
Deadpool's
Oogie
gone
Boogie.
and Oogie Boogie's over.
Yeah,
They'll put tables back there, and that's actually pretty good back there.
yeah. We
It's
like
just like
that
one of those
spot.
multi-purpose spaces that ends up being something at some point in time. So it's like it's not reliable, but when it's there, it's great.
Yeah, we like that spot a lot. Sometimes it's not quiet, but the under the swings, like there's
Hmm.
some benches in there, but again, it's not
Yeah,
quiet. It's not super quiet. And then we will go to
as long
animation.
as you can listen to that announcement every 2 minutes, hold on to your things. You know the radio announcer guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, another really good one. If you don't need you might be able to find some. If you don't need a chair or a bench, and you can either sit on the floor or just kind of lean up against a post, is the walkway between Avengers Campus and Cars Land is
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I used to love that back when it was Bugs Land. That was
Oh,
still a really great walkway.
I know. And I think a lot of people don't realize you don't have to be guest of the hotel to go to the hotels. So
That's very true.
we will go to Grand California, although the lobby, I love it. It's beautiful, but it is always like the Arctic Circle in there. It is so
Yeah,
cold.
it
But we go up to
is.
the third floor or we go to the fifth floor and there's a patio that overlooks the
Hmm.
pools.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Next time you go, fifth floor patio.
Fifth
It's
floor.
really, and
Okay.
they have like these kind of like sectional like couches out there. That's a good space.
They also have some really good nooks in the lobby because, they know that people are going to be there and taking calls. And so
Yep.
they do have some quiet spaces for, business people that I would absolutely use for,
Yeah.
for some quiet.
I also like the open space where they host weddings at the Disneyland Hotel. So where the
Oh, the
gazebo
Rose
is,
Garden.
the Rose
Yeah.
Garden, and then behind that area, like, if you have little ones that really want to kind of get like some sensory, they're feeling like they want to run around. But even for adults, like grab some Dole Whip at Trader
Yeah.
Sam's and it's
Yeah.
just like a nice quiet spot.
Well,
They're,
even right outside of Trader Sam's, that big fireplace down at the bottom of
yes,
the steps, that's a good spot too.
yeah,
As long, it really just depends on how many iPads are in the area. That's how I gauge how comfortable I'm going to be. I'm like, how many iPads do I see?
yeah. But I think that it's a lot of people don't realize that it is a bit of a walk, from
It
Disneyland,
is.
but
Yeah.
you don't have to be the guest. You don't have to be a guest at any of the hotels to take advantage
Right.
of it. So,
No, you can use and if you're already at the Disneyland Hotel or downtown Disney and you're close enough to the Disneyland Hotel, Palm Breeze, the restaurant back by the pool, it's not a popular restaurant,
no, cuz
and
I
so
don't think
you
a lot
can
of people
use
realize that it's open,
no,
that they can go there.
no, and anytime we've gone over there, it's been pretty empty.
Yeah.
So I would say, if you see that it's mellow, go grab a table and have a couple, not you don't have to get a drink, but like grab a Coke or just like
Yeah.
chill out. They're not going to mind.
Also, if you can get into Palm Breeze, you can get access to their pool, and that pool at the DVC, at the villas, There's also
Yeah.
tables around the pool, and a lot of people don't
Yes.
realize that either. So it's just kind of,
Yeah.
there's all
And it's
these like
all open.
totally. And there's all
Yeah.
these little like nooks, like you're saying, that, I mean, again, it's a little bit of walking, but sometimes just to take like an
It's worth
extended
the piece,
lunch break.
though. It
Yeah.
really is. It's worth the piece. And if you're not in a crisis and you have the ability to walk a little bit, to those areas, it's so worth the piece.
Yeah. Are there any rides in particular, kind of like pivoting from break spots to rides? And I know you said you don't always ride rides, but like
Yeah.
if you're with some of your friends or family, like how do you feel about taking a train ride or taking a round trip on the monorail? Like any of those longer rides, do those often help you?
Oh, the train being down right now is the saddest thing for me.
No.
I love people think that I love the train because it's the train, but I love the train because of the piece.
Yeah.
It's um if you can position, I'm always very aware of where I sit. And it's a lot of people assume it's because, oh, you want to see the room, like they think it's like that cop thing where they want to see where all the exits are. And I go, yeah, 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 but deep down the real reason is I need to see where all the noise is coming from. I need to see like who's talking, who's yelling, who's crying. Like I need to see those things so that my brain can process them. Sure, I want to know where the exits are, but that's not my main goal. I just let people believe that. And I think saying that with my wife sitting right here, she might be actually kind of surprised by that. She's like, "Yeah, I am." It's not the exits, it's the noise. I need to see who's making noise.
Yeah.
And so the train, if you can get like a corner spot, um best case scenario. So they have like the audience seating
Yeah.
train. Um a good Disneyland person would know which train that was, and I
Yeah.
can't think of it off the top of my head. But if you can get a corner there, it might seem like you're trapped, but it's the best case scenario because everybody sits towards the middle so they can
Yeah.
get to the exits.
Yeah.
So that's a really good escape. I haven't really used the monorail much, and I don't know why. There's no real reason.
Yeah. I mean, we always try to like find those like longer rides,
Yeah,
where we just kind of need a little bit. Everyone needs like a break.
yeah.
Um,
Storybook Land
yeah.
canal boats, amazing,
Yeah.
because it's so mellow. I
Yeah.
mean, the even the storyteller cast member, they're not screaming at you, they're not yelling the story, they're just very conversationally telling you what is what. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of sound coming from the attraction. There's not a lot of there's no hardly any lights. So that's a good one in my eyes. And again, this is my experience because my main trigger is sound. And the biggest trigger for me is overhead announcements. That's a killer for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that things like that. What else was that? There was another one. Oh, Small World. Surprisingly, for me, I enjoy,
Yeah.
and I think it's because I can distract myself with the song enough. Um, yeah, that one is surprisingly not triggering for me because
Yeah.
it's a
I
lot of
mean,
noise.
it's a lot of noise and there's a lot of like lighting changes,
Hmm.
but I mean, I think it's around 15 to 16 minutes, good AC, slow ride. And as long as
Yeah,
you don't have a lot of like loud people on your boat, like
yeah,
it can be kind of a comforting ride.
yeah. And sometimes for me, and you said people. I said my biggest trigger is overhead announcements. My biggest trigger is people. If I'm being honest, and
Yeah.
that's because I can most of the time understand that this song is coming from this attraction because it's supposed to. Um, but when I hear something that's conflicting with that, somebody talking over a ride. It happened today. I was on the Jungle Cruise, and there was a couple of ladies sitting across from me talking at full volume while the jungle skipper was talking at full
Hmm.
volume on her microphone. And it today's trigger or today's reaction was unfortunately like irritation. And I
Yeah.
almost said, "Hey, excuse me, she's talking."
Hmm.
And that's how it would have come out, unfortunately. And so I just kind of focused on what I was doing, which was capturing content. And I found out today, sorry, completely sidetrack. and I'm going to say this to my family who's sitting over here. I found that a really good tool to keep me focused is my recording.
Yeah.
My little camera has become a lifesaver for me.
Hmm.
I went through the Jungle Cruise line at 25-minute line with no issues.
Do you think that I wonder about this with my son a little bit? It's like kind of redirecting focus. Like,
Yeah,
I think that, and I'm not a clinician. I'm
sure.
not trying to prescribe any treatment or
Right.
anything, but that's also what's helped my son is when he can kind of redirect his focus onto something else, it kind of takes him outside of what is setting him off. And again, I
Right.
know I'm comparing a 14-year-old to an adult, but like I'm wondering if
Same
you
team though,
yeah,
same team.
yeah,
I feel like I was so hyper focused on, oh, I got to make sure that I show this. I found a spot because I don't go through the traditional queues very often, so I'll see things if I do that I've never seen before.
mhm,
I saw there's an airplane wing that forms part of the ceiling, and I was so focused on getting a shot of that that I didn't even notice that the room behind me was just full of people.
yeah,
And so when I turned around, I was like, oh God, this is my nightmare. And my buddy Vinny was like, well, then look over there and record that. And so I was really using my camera. I have we have, Kim and I have the same camera. We have these cool little DJI Osmos is what they're called. They're these little robot looking things.
yep,
But I was focused so heavily on my camera screen that nothing was really triggering me. And it was
yeah,
like, did I find a fix? And I'm like, don't lean on that. Like it might not work in all situations, but in this moment it did. And that was really, really helpful for me.
yeah. So what is, any advice that you can share with another neurodivergent adult who may be really wanting to go to Disneyland and
Yeah.
nervous about it? Like, what would you recommend they do to make their experience like smoother and more enjoyable?
Yeah. There's so many people that'll say, oh, just go with the flow. Don't go with the flow. Don't do that. Go at your own pace.
Yeah,
Go, at what's comfortable for you. There's going to be times where, and well, obviously the first thing is see what resources are available to you.
yeah,
If you're eligible for the DOS program, utilize it. I talked on my podcast with Kim about this level of guilt and shame that I felt at one point. I don't feel like that anymore because I've had enough people tell me, "Hey, like this was designed with you in mind. Like use what's available to you." So that's my first thing. If there's a resource available to you, utilize it and don't feel bad about it. That's what it's for. Secondly, and I'm not saying this just because Kim's my friend or because I'm on her experience right now, but check out her guide because there's so much information in there that will help you with navigating the parks that is sure a lot of this information is found elsewhere. You can find it online or with cast members, but you have to become a detective in this, or you have to have a PhD in internet searching for
super sleuth.
yeah, it's crazy how it's not in one spot. Well, now it is. Kim has a guide for it. Check
Thank
that out. I think that's good. But I think like, and this is again, I'm yeah, like you said, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a clinician. I don't do this as a practice, but I think something that I've been really trying to do lately, not just with Disneyland and navigating that, but just like in general, like the interactions you have with people, the things that you go through with your family or your friends, like just realize like it is so cliche and I'm sorry, but it's true. It's okay to not be okay. Like just
Yeah,
understand that like sometimes you have to step away. Sometimes you have to freak out. Sometimes you have to do whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better. And sometimes that's, jumping over and sitting at Pelican's Landing for 15 minutes because you can't handle, what you just experienced on the Haunted Mansion. Like that's okay.
yeah,
Do that thing. Like I said, go at your own pace because if you're going with the flow of your group, not everybody is the same in that group. And some people want to go, 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 go. Some people want to take it super easy. And I say this to not only people that suffer from, I don't want to say suffer because I don't suffer. I have to live with it. People that live with a neurodivergence, like we're not all the same. and no two people are going to want to experience the parks the same way.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're going with a big group, find the person that goes at your pace. If you're
Mhm.
with just one other person, just say, hey, I can't do that right now. Just be open and honest, go at your own pace, and just know what resources are available to you. I think that's my big advice.
Yeah, that's all really great advice. I mean, that's what I like to share with people that I work with too. It's like, do what makes you happy and what is
Yeah,
comfortable for you. And I think, I think it doesn't matter how old you are. And a lot of people still struggle with like self advocacy, but it's also like helpful if you're going with a group of people, really kind of set that expectation up front. Like, I'm not going to want to go at 8 in the morning and stay until midnight. I'm not going to want to go
yeah,
on every ride. Like, I'll catch
yeah,
up with you at, let's go on 2 rides. I'm going to take a break and I'll meet you here. So
yeah,
I think really setting the expectation with your group and your party and knowing what you really want to do going into your trip, I think is also going to really set you up for success and have
yeah.
fun.
I think the biggest focus for anybody that has this type of thing going on, I think is like what you're saying is um, communication.
Hmm.
Communicate how you're doing by the minute, by the hour, by the day if you're there for multiple days. Just like if you're with your spouse, obviously you can trust your spouse to
Yeah.
have that conversation, you know. If you're with a large group of people, maybe there's one person you need to tell that will kind of like guide the group to, accommodate you and your needs. Just communicate with someone. Tell somebody how you're doing. I tell Tabitha all the time, like, I'm not feeling this today. I'm not doing X. I'm not doing Z. Like, I've got to
Yeah.
do something else. Um, you know, I think the only person I ever uh, say yes to 100% of the time is my daughter. And so even if I'm not feeling it, I'll be like, yeah, I'll definitely do that. So that might be something I need to work on with her, being honest with her sometimes. But I'm always letting people know, yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm overstimulated, I'm overwhelmed, I can't deal with, the noise, or I can't stand, there's too many people over there, or you just have to be honest and open with the people that you're around, and they'll appreciate it. Because what's worse than having an open and honest conversation? Freaking out with your friends,
Yeah.
or getting
Yeah.
mad at your friends, or getting collapsing into yourself and not talking to anybody for the rest of the day. These are the things that happen to people when they're experiencing these things.
Yeah.
So I think that's better, just to communicate if you
Yeah, and I
can.
like kind of how you're saying the buddy system. I mean, it has a little bit you're planning a little bit, but I mean, even like if you're having a hard time speaking up, like come up with a safe word or just use the word
Yeah,
break, and
yeah,
like break, and that means like we have to stop.
yeah.
So I think
And
the
I
buddy.
think everybody should have a safe word for like escaping situations anyway. Like, not even if you don't have any neurodivergent traits or anything, I think a safe word is always applicable to a group setting, or your wife or your whatever. Like, I can give Tabitha a look and she knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So mine's a safe look, I guess. But having that anyway, just as a human being, I think is important. So
Yeah.
especially if you have something that kind of is triggering to you.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
Sean, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I've so
Oh,
appreciated all of our.
please. This is listen, I have been so thankful to meet you, because you understand me as a human, because we've had open, honest conversations. You experience some things with your own family that you understand me a little bit better. But also, like, we're very like-minded Disney people, and that makes me so happy. You love Disney as much as I do. I think your reasons are a lot different than mine, but the love is the same. And I've been really enjoying like collaborating with you and getting to know you. And when I said I was sad that I didn't get to see you the other day, I was genuinely sad. Not just like, oh yeah, we'll see her again. I was like, man, we missed Kim. I'm really bummed. It was a hard day. I have to admit. So I'm so thankful that you're part of our lives, and I'm so thankful that you are on this same mission of like normalizing neurodivergence, normalizing these processes that we're forced to go through, normalizing uh, enter, being entertained in the same way as anybody else at Disneyland, and really putting out the message that Disneyland is for everyone.
It's for everyone. Yeah. Well, you're just the sweetest, and I so appreciate you. And I've so enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you.
Yes.
And I know that these conversations will continue and we'll continue to
Yes.
collaborate. Where can everyone find you? Why don't you talk to me
Oh
a little
man,
bit
we're
about your
everywhere.
podcast?
Yeah, we're everywhere. So our podcast is on all the major platforms. Anywhere you listen to a podcast, you'll find us. Just search Magic on Main Street. But you can find us on Instagram at Magic on Main Street Official. Our YouTube is under Magic on Main Street. But if you are really confused by what I just said, saying Magic on Main Street over and over again, go to magiconmainstreet.com. And you'll find all of our links to all of our socials, our YouTube channel. You'll find out a little bit more about us. And yeah, it's we have a lot of fun with Disneyland, so we like to share that with the world.
Well, that's awesome. Sean, thank you again so much. I so appreciate the conversation. And again, I know we'll have more to come.
Absolutely, I can't wait to see you.